Separate rooms, separate beds, and separate homes? No matter where the king and his queen consort stay, they can rest assured that they'll never have to sleep together.
Many royal fans have been left curious about what would happen to Queen Camilla's royal title and what her place would be in the monarchy.
He succeeds me as Duke of Cornwall and takes on the responsibilities for the Duchy of Cornwall, which I have undertaken for more than 5 decades.
Queen Camilla, once the most controversial woman in Britain, has just been removed from the royal family. But why now? And why so suddenly? Was it Princess Anne's explosive confrontation that triggered this downfall? Or has this been brewing beneath the royal surface for years? The monarchy has seen scandal, betrayal, and power plays, but nothing like this. What she revealed about Camilla left King Charles with no choice. But what did she say? And how deep does this scandal go? One royal dared to break protocol and shattered the monarchy's façade in one public moment. For decades, the image of King Charles and Queen Camilla had been carefully sculpted and presented to the world like a polished gem. Stable, dignified, and enduring. But behind the stately photographs and orchestrated smiles, the truth told a different story. Their marriage, though long-standing, had always been more of an arrangement than a romance. Camilla had fought hard for her place, but some inside the palace never truly accepted her, and none more so than Princess Anne. Anne had seen it all. The scandals, the spin, the slow transformation of Camilla from public pariah to queen consort. But loyalty runs deep in the veins of the Princess Royal, and when loyalty is betrayed, it becomes something else entirely, something fierce. For years, Anne had kept her thoughts to herself, watching as Camilla quietly gained ground within royal operations. She didn't speak, not publicly. She didn't complain, but she noticed. Every appearance Camilla made without consulting senior royals, every event she subtly took over, every decision she influenced behind the scenes, Anne catalogued it all. And then came the night that changed everything. King Charles's coronation banquet was supposed to be a celebration, a symbol of continuity, tradition, and unity. But unity was already cracking beneath the weight of silent resentments. The ballroom shimmered with gold and crystal, the air thick with the grandeur of history. Yet in that charged atmosphere, something far more powerful was brewing. The simmering fury of a sister who had finally had enough. As glasses clinked and polite laughter filled the room, Anne stood, not with a toast, but with a truth bomb. What she said wasn't whispered behind closed doors. It wasn't softened by diplomacy. It was raw, direct, and public. She turned to Camilla with the icy precision of someone who knew exactly what she was about to unleash. With the royal family seated in stunned attention and media eyes lurking just beyond the palace walls, Anne spoke words that cut through the ceremony like a blade. She accused Camilla of orchestrating her rise with manipulation, of consolidating power by marginalizing other senior royals, and of violating the very structure the monarchy had been built upon. There was no apology in her tone, no fear, just decades of restraint, snapping all at once. Gasps were stifled, utensils frozen mid-air. This wasn't just a family confrontation, it was a royal reckoning. The monarchy, so adept at hiding its wounds beneath tradition and protocol, had just been publicly exposed by one of its own. No one could believe it had happened. Not here, not now, and certainly not from Anne. But as the weight of her words settled over the room, one truth became undeniable. The palace had been living a lie, and Anne had just lit the match to burn it down. But what had Camilla done to push Anne over the edge? The answer lies in months, maybe years of quiet betrayal. Camilla was never meant to lead, but she started acting like the one pulling the strings. Her journey to queen consort wasn't built on public admiration or overwhelming support. It was built on endurance, patience, and a relentless strategy few could see coming. Once reviled as the woman who disrupted a fairy tale, Camilla had been forced to fight not just for her place at Charles's side, but for the very legitimacy of her presence in the royal family. The public wasn't easy to win over, and even within the palace walls, not everyone was ready to welcome her. But while the world focused on royal ceremonies and pageantry, Camilla was playing a longer game, one move at a time. Queen Elizabeth's final years were marked by a desire to protect the monarchy's future. In a gesture that stunned the nation, she announced that Camilla should be known as Queen Consort upon Charles's ascension. It was a moment carefully framed as a symbol of peace and continuity, a final seal of approval from a monarch who rarely made emotional decisions. But beneath the surface, it stirred quiet unease. Granting a title didn't erase the past, and not everyone agreed that Camilla had earned her place. Yet, she didn't flinch. Instead, she stepped into the role with surprising confidence, and with Charles as king, the real transformation began. What followed was a subtle but unmistakable shift in palace dynamics. Camilla didn't storm through royal tradition with declarations, she infiltrated it with decisions. She placed her trusted family members into high-profile royal events, giving them roles that seemed ceremonial but were symbolically potent. While the Middletons' Kate's family were gradually pushed to the sidelines, Camilla's circle grew louder and more visible. To the outside world, it might have looked like inclusion, but to insiders, it felt like a hostile takeover wearing a polite smile. Power in the monarchy doesn't always announce itself. It's often quiet, inherited through ritual, or claimed through presence. And Camilla, once merely a companion in Charles's shadow, began shaping decisions that rippled across the royal hierarchy. Who appeared where? Who was seen beside the king? Who stood on the palace balcony all suddenly had Camilla's fingerprints. What made it more unnerving was the elegance of her strategy. She didn't demand control, she simply took it, piece by piece, moment by moment. Those who dared to question her were labeled stuck in the past. She had, after all, endured decades of hostility. But surviving public hatred is not the same as winning institutional trust. And the truth was, not everyone was convinced she was acting in the monarchy's best interest. Even as Charles focused on his duties as king, Camilla was quietly redrawing the lines of loyalty. Her influence was no longer just symbolic, it was functional. She was deciding who mattered in the royal family, and more importantly, who didn't. And yet, through all the handshakes and headlines, the smile never faltered. Camilla mastered the art of staying just behind the curtain while ensuring every thread of the stage was tied to her hand. The public believed they were seeing a graceful queen consort fulfilling her role. But inside the palace, there was a growing fear. The monarchy wasn't just being represented by Camilla, it was being redirected by her. She had endured. She had risen. And now, she was quietly taking control of the very institution that had once tried to keep her out. And as Camilla tightened her grip, the next sign of rebellion came not from Anne, but from Kate Middleton. One missing curtsy sent shockwaves through the monarchy, and everyone knew exactly what it meant. Kate Middleton, the future queen and the crown jewel of the modern royal image, didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her message came wrapped in silence, sealed in stillness, and delivered at the one moment everyone was watching. At a major public event, where tradition demanded obedience and gestures carried centuries of weight, she chose not to curtsy to Queen Camilla, And in doing so, she shattered more than etiquette. She shattered the illusion of unity the royal family had fought so hard to preserve. This wasn't a slip. It wasn't an oversight. It was deliberate. Because, in royal life, a curtsy is never just a bow of the head or a bend of the knee. It is a public acknowledgement of status, an unmistakable nod to the hierarchy of power. When Kate refused to offer that gesture, she wasn't simply ignoring protocol. She was declaring resistance, not with confrontation, not with speeches, but with the kind of quiet defiance that speaks louder than words. For an institution built on symbolism, the act was seismic. The cameras caught it. The crowd noticed. And within hours, whispers became headlines. Why didn't Kate curtsy? What did it mean? For royal watchers and insiders alike, there was no confusion. This was not the gesture of a supportive daughter-in-law. It was a message sent through silence, a message that Camilla's growing dominance within the palace was not just unwelcome, but deeply contested. Some dismissed it as a personal grudge, rooted in the complex past between Camilla and William, a past still haunted by the shadow of Princess Diana. But those closer to the crown understood it for what it truly was: a fracture, a line drawn between the old guard and the future, between a monarchy clinging to survival and a new generation ready to challenge everything it stood for. Kate's refusal to curtsy marked a pivotal moment. It was the first visible crack in the polished armor of royal unity. And while the public was captivated by the spectacle, the palace was roiling beneath the surface. Because for every move made in the spotlight, there were a dozen more happening behind closed doors, where Camilla's influence was steadily growing, and her family was being woven deeper into royal life. But things were already unraveling behind. Closed doors and Camilla's family was at the center of the chaos. When Camilla brought her family to the palace, she didn't just break tradition, she drew a battle line. For centuries, the British monarchy has thrived on order, discretion, and balance. It is a world where favoritism is carefully masked. Royal insiders were stunned, not because William had acted, but because of how. He didn't need to posture. He didn't seek approval. This wasn't the diplomacy of a prince raised under a grandmother's reign. It was the action of a man preparing to lead in a new era. His removal of Annabel Elliot was subtle, yet seismic. It echoed through the walls of every royal residence, announcing that William wasn't just observing the family's unraveling, he was prepared to manage it. Camilla, blindsided and enraged, was left in a position she had not anticipated. Her sister, her closest ally in the court, had been ousted. And while William offered no words, his silence carried a truth louder than any speech. The monarchy was evolving, and there was no longer space for unearned influence. Camilla's response wasn't loud either, but it was powerful. She vanished from public life almost overnight. She disappeared as suddenly as she rose, but Camilla's silence spoke louder than any headline. There was no press release, no farewell statement, no curtain call. One day, she was at the heart of royal life, smiling, attending events, and shaping the monarchy's direction. The next, she was gone. Camilla, Queen Consort of the United Kingdom, had stepped back from her royal duties without warning. For a woman who had spent decades clawing her way from scandal to power, her vanishing act sent shockwaves across the palace and beyond. And what made it even more unsettling was how quiet it was. No scandal had broken, no illness confirmed, just silence. And that silence ignited a storm of speculation. Was it the pressure? Are the years of public scrutiny finally catching up? Or had the palace quietly pushed her aside to restore balance? Some whispered of health issues, citing stress and emotional fatigue. Others suspected something far more strategic, a calculated retreat, designed to protect her from further backlash and distance her from an institution that was cracking under her weight. But in a monarchy where every move is deliberate, Camilla's sudden withdrawal was anything but random. It felt like damage control cloaked in dignity. The media erupted. Headlines questioned everything: her mental state, her future, her marriage. Public opinion fractured. For some, it was a sad end to a woman who had endured the unendurable, standing by King Charles through decades of controversy. To them, her retreat was a sign of vulnerability, even strength. But to others, it was long overdue. Camilla, they believed, had crossed lines she was never meant to. Her silence, to them, wasn't graceful, it was an escape. And behind closed doors, her absence created more than confusion. It created a vacuum. Because when the queen consort vanishes, the palace doesn't pause. It recalibrates. Events still unfold. Decisions still need to be made. And now, with Camilla gone, the question was no longer just about why she left, it was about who would fill the space she left behind. Would Charles falter without his closest confidant? Would the monarchy attempt to restore its fractured image by elevating another figure? And above all, was this the beginning of a quiet abdication, not of a throne, but of power? As the public searched for answers and the palace maintained its elegant silence, one truth lingered in the air like fog. Camilla's retreat was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of something far more consequential, a shift in power, a reckoning. And in her absence, the person who had exposed her Princess Anne stepped into the spotlight once more. She's always worked in the shadows. But now, Princess Anne is the royal family's sharpest weapon. For years, Anne remained the monarchy's most overlooked strength. Unflinching, unshaken, uninterested in attention or titles beyond her duty. While others courted headlines and stumbled under the spotlight, she labored in silence, clocking more engagements, shouldering more responsibilities, and earning a quiet but fierce respect that no scandal could touch. She didn't need fanfare. Her loyalty to the crown spoke louder than any speech. And when the royal family stood on the brink of collapse, it was Anne, not a king, not a future queen, who stepped forward and drew the line. What she did to Camilla wasn't out of malice. It wasn't jealousy. It was something far more dangerous. Obligation. Anne had watched the institution she'd protected for a lifetime begin to fracture from within. Power was shifting, not through ceremony, but through whispers, allegiances, and unchecked ambition. And when Camilla began consolidating influence, bringing in her family, eclipsing others, and disregarding protocol, Anne's silence broke. Not because she sought control, but because she knew what was at stake. The monarchy had survived wars, divorces, and exiles, but it had never faced a threat from inside its own heart. Until now, Anne's public confrontation with Camilla didn't just alter royal dynamics, it shook public perception to its core. Suddenly, the woman long dismissed as cold and distant became something else entirely. A guardian. A woman is willing to risk everything, including public scrutiny, to defend the values the monarchy claimed to stand for. She didn't smile for the cameras. She didn't offer polished statements. But in that one pivotal moment, she became the unexpected protector of a crumbling institution. Insiders began to see it too. With Camilla's retreat, a power vacuum had formed, and Anne didn't step into it by ambition. She filled it out because someone had to. Her influence began to grow not through title, but through trust. Staff turned to her. Family members listened more carefully. Even Charles, wounded by the collapse of his most trusted partnership, leaned on her presence. She had always been steady. Now she was central, and yet Anne never asked for credit. She never sought the crown's spotlight, but she understood something that few others did. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's earned through years of unwavering service. Sometimes it's revealed only when everything else begins to fall apart. Her role in exposing Camilla's overreach wasn't the climax of her journey, it was the beginning of her transformation. From reliable royal to essential stabilizer, from background figure to the cornerstone. The question now is no longer whether Anne can lead, but whether she should. Could she, the most dutiful of royals, play a central role in rebuilding what has been broken? Could the monarchy endure without her measured strength behind the scenes? But the monarchy's future doesn't just rest on Anne, it now depends on the Prince and Princess of Wales. The crown is still on Charles's head, but the real power is shifting to William and Kate. In the wake of Camilla's quiet retreat and Charles's visible health struggles, a new image is emerging, one that feels less like a transition and more like a quiet coronation. William and Kate, once the supporting cast in the monarchy's long-running drama, are now stepping into the center. Not with fanfare, but with focus. Not by declaration, but by necessity. The public sees it. The palace feels it. And even the press, long fixated on scandal, is beginning to shift its gaze to the couple who just might be the monarchy's final shot at survival. They were never supposed to rise this fast. Charles's reign had only just begun. Camilla was supposed to be the stabilizer, but fate had other plans. And now, the weight of an ancient institution rests on the shoulders of a modern couple still learning how to carry it. William, hardened by loss, scandals, and the burden of legacy, is no longer the cautious heir. He's taking charge. His moves from trimming royal expenses to redefining protocol signal a monarchy being reshaped under his watch. He isn't just preparing to be king. He's already practicing. But no figure in this transformation carries more symbolic pressure than Kate. Poised, measured, beloved by the public. She represents both the monarchy's best hope and its deepest gamble. After all, history has not been kind to women who ascend too quickly in the royal sphere. Camilla's story lingers like a warning about how public affection can sour, how alliances can turn, and how influence can isolate. And now, all eyes are on Kate, not just as a consort in waiting, but as a leader who must bridge the monarchy's past with the demands of a new generation. Can she avoid the traps that consumed Camilla? Can she maintain the delicate balance between tradition and progress, between deference and assertion? So far, she's walked the line with grace. But as the spotlight intensifies, and as William steps into greater power, the test will grow harder. Every gesture, every silence, every smile will be dissected, judged, and weaponized. In a royal family haunted by memory and burdened by legacy, the only way forward is reinvention. And Kate is now at the heart of that transformation. The pressure is relentless, but so is the potential. William and Kate have become the faces of a monarchy, trying desperately to stay relevant in a world that no longer bends for titles. Their popularity isn't just inherited, it's earned. Through consistency, through compassion, through subtle rebellion wrapped in tradition. And now, more than ever, the monarchy is leaning on them not just to lead, but to survive. The story, of Queen Camilla's downfall isn't just a royal scandal. It's a warning, a shift, and maybe a new beginning.